just getting that. So. Yeah, he's really nervous with that talk, bless him.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, if at any point you want to send me or do it, I'll give you a question. I can see.
Just waiting for some people to join. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the Trump's tariffs, what data leaders need to know. I'm Nathan Jones and I'll be hosting today. Bit of background on myself. I'm the founder and CEO of Calon Analytics. We're a analytics consulting and technology company based in Zurich. We help consumer and industrial goods companies make the most of their data end to end. My background is I've been set up. I set up Calon last year, and prior to that, I had 18 years in Deloitte, and I've been working for 25 years in the business analytics space. What we're going to cover today, I'm trying to give you a good overview of the current situation, what it means for businesses, and what it means for a data leader really to be valuable in this particular environment right now, and a view on what you could do next if I was you. But to start, we'll start with really what are tariffs. It's worthwhile just level setting on what they are. So tariffs and duties. The words are pretty much interchangeable. They're taxes applied by governments on the value of imported goods. So they're making products more expensive and less competitive compared to homegrown products, but also there's a way of controlling what particular goods come into a country. For example, most of you will have paid most of you will have been to an airport and seen duty free. When you go through those duty-free payments are away from the duties on alcohol, tobacco, and so on. More and more companies have what the US are doing with tariffs is very much about putting more of those duties, more of those tariffs on a wider range of companies, wider range of products than before. So the importer is going to pay the tariff via a bill. They'll get it from customs. It's not from your importer, not from your distributor. There's usually the customs value is the baseline for most products. And there's two key areas that impact the rate. There's the product tariff classification, which is really critical to get right. It's often known as the HTS code. This is per product, per good, and also the country of origin of the product. It's not the country of export, it's the country of origin. And that's what a lot of the noise in the news this last week has been about, looking at the different reciprocal tariffs between the US and the EU and China and so on. From a data leader's perspective, it's critical to get the data right for both the product itself and the country of origin of these products. So keep an eye on that as we go through this. And from a financial perspective, the custom duties are above the line, so they affect directly the profit of the business, not like maybe tax, income taxes, which are on your profits. Hopefully that gives a quick overview of what are tariffs. The current situation, I think everything's changing very rapidly. The end of last week, the US had obviously imposed these reciprocal tariffs globally. We've got the different nation of origin tariffs, plus different classifications on specific goods and products. There are certain across the board tariffs, including the 25% tariffs on cars, steel, aluminium, and there's a whole bunch of exempt goods. But then the latest situation, okay, the tariffs on automobiles, steel, aluminium remain. There's a 90-day pause currently on the nation of origin reciprocal tariffs. There's still some tariffs that are applying across the board of 10%. But the trade war has begun since last week. The China tariffs from the US, so goods coming from China into the US, are currently at 145. That was this morning. And China have applied a 125% tariff on the US, and that's really recent, last couple of hours. So really, these things are moving quickly. The EU is looking at using the 90-day pause to negotiate what's going on, and there's different setups for Mexico and Canada in terms of their tariffs. What does this mean for business? I think that you've seen a few different reactions. Some companies are pausing shipments to the US. Some companies are seeing a large sort of cost impact, which in some cases, especially for smaller companies, is potentially life-threatening for the business. We're seeing already growth forecasts being slashed, for example, down in Germany. We're seeing builders and manufacturers of goods who are in the US looking at how they rearrange their supply chain in order to deal with the tariffs. What we've seen as well is, since then, the stock markets have been up and down. A couple of days ago, the FTSE 100 had been down a lot, now back up. It's moving again today. There's no predictability in that setup. So how are businesses responding? It's not simple. There's multiple factors. We've got very complex and interdependent supply chains. There's a number of topics around the globe already with conflict, risk. There's sanctions in play. There's the like China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, Middle East. There's various things going on. We need to deal with the impact of the current manufacturing locations, what contracts are in place between manufacturers and their or between goods companies and their manufacturers, and also the impact of the market prices in the markets that they're working with. And there's a few tactics that are happening. Cost reduction and working capital analysis is a no-brainer. It's going to happen. It's almost the go-to in finance to make things happen. Companies are thinking about what's our go-to-market. Are we really going to continue to serve tariff-applying markets, or are we going to look differently? So there's a big pricing and profitability angle that we need to take into consideration there. From a manufacturing perspective, the product mix that you're making is absolutely crucial. If you're in the US, then companies are going to be reviewing, optimizing where manufacturing is happening, how it's contracted, and then your tax teams and so on are going to be working out the meaning of that. If you're outside the US, then if you think that the US is going to be a major target mid-long term, do you need to shift manufacturing into the US? How do you deal with these? So there's a number of different tactics that companies are going through. Each company will have its own way. We'll check in on if there's any questions in the chat. Nothing at the moment. Let's maybe carry on and see if there's maybe in 10-15 minutes we'll have another check on the chat. Please like and subscribe on this and connect with me on LinkedIn so we can keep the conversation going. So let's get to the main part of this, really, which is what's the role of the data leader if you want to be part of the solution. If you think your role as a data leader is I've got to get all my company's data into an Azure data lake, for example, then that's probably not the right answer when you're trying to be part of a business solution. So we're really focusing on this is how data can help become a business solution here. So taking a pause, actually, like the 90 days, this 90-day pause has, in the reciprocal tariffs, has ironically, I think, made it more important that data leaders are involved. If it was just finance involved, then, if it was just immediately, then finance would have solved it. It would be going off on their own, doing everything. Now you've got the situation where data leaders have to get involved. They see the data across the organization, across supply chain, across multiple others, and should be playing a key role in this. There's three areas to focus on, and then I'm going to focus on what to do next. First of all, we'll run through the different people and stakeholders that data leaders should be engaging with. We'll talk about some key data elements that you need to be on top of, some of the key analytics use cases that are live here, and I'll give my view on what you should be doing in the next day or so and in the next 90 days in order to make this the most of this. So who are the main stakeholders? As a data leader, finance are probably one of your big stakeholders anyway. They'll continue to be. They're going to be running a lot of analyses in these areas. Supply chain, you're probably close to if you're in manufacturing or consumer goods. You're going to be already looking at the impact of inventory, of supply chain, of what's being made, who's buying, who's selling throughout. But there's a couple of other areas who you may not be as closely involved with, in particularly tax and customs. I'd imagine you may never have even spoken to your customs guys before. That's quite that could happen. And also the teams who actually manage your product are going to be really crucial. So let's starting with customs. I'd sort of be very surprised if customs had not already established a task force around this. They're going to be needing to sort out what are the high-risk products, make sure that everything's classified. They're going to be at the center of this, especially from a management perspective. They'll particularly want to understand the impact of in-transit goods. So whether that's in your ERP, whether it's coming from some of your suppliers, that's going to be information you need to be working closely with customs on. They're a very key stakeholder. Finance, obviously, like I say, is a key stakeholder. Product P&L and margin analysis is going to be a crucial use case for finance. Understanding the impact on working capital, understanding both your product and customer portfolio profitability is going to be crucial. So data teams, analytics teams who are often integrating even more granular data than finance have. Finance are sometimes dealing with summary data, which doesn't always give you the most granular view and granular cuts. I think your data team is going to be really important in making this work. Then you've got other questions like price elasticity and, of course, cost reduction. I think that if you look at finance teams or CFOs, if there's a challenge going on around it, then tightening the belt strings is going to be on the agenda. So be ready for this and start thinking how you can help understand where the costs are, how you can help get that data available to the finance teams to make that happen, because you'll show that you're really part of the solution there. Supply chain, I think obviously is going to be critical. Like I say, if you're a global manufacturer, you're probably very close to your supply chain. Whether you're getting into, it's probably not so much S&OP anymore, but looking at the manufacturing footprint, looking at the risk areas, looking at where your suppliers are, looking at the types of contracts you have with the suppliers. The in-transit inventory part comes up again here, where we're looking at, okay, what's our risk of the the goods that are already on the way to the US, for example, from China. Have you got the how much are you going to have to pay, and when they hit the US shore? On tax, there's a number of different tax elements, everything from customs duty, supply chain, transfer pricing, indirect or VAT, the elements of provisioning for tax in the future, as well as being part of the global response. Tax will be a major part of this solution, so get in touch with them quickly so that you can really address some of their challenges. It's a major topic, so be on top of it. Then finally, we'll talk at the product. So the people who own product master data are going to have quite a big role to play going forward, because it's not just the materials, it's not just the finished goods, it's also the materials. I believe that there's an element that if 20% of the goods are made in the US, then there's some reductions in tariffs. Check that. That's not legal advice. But there's things to be aware of in terms of the book of materials, in terms of the in terms of the bill of materials, how the materials come together, what the dependencies are, making sure that the origin of the materials and of the goods is accurately specified is going to be crucial. I think especially as let's say the trade wars are heating up and more tariffs are coming between China and the US, and we don't know what the EU is going to do, then it's going to be really important to make sure that you've got that product data correct. The HTS is part of that. That's the international customs codes. So probably something you may have not been too familiar with in the past, but something that you'll probably feel very comfortable with in 2 or 3 months' time and be all over it. The product are also going to be looking at the alternative materials, and so on. I think then making sure that they're sharing that data internally. I think as a data leader, that's where you're going to be working very closely with those product teams. And then, so let's say, what about the data itself? So master data, getting the master data right is going to be critical. In many cases, this falls under the head of data and in the chief data officer. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If no one's taking responsibility as a data leader, you probably should be getting involved, even if you're not owning it. Some of the key data elements that you'll need to get right, like we said, the HTS classifications, the information that comes from the US in terms of calculations and documentations, understanding change history of products and documents, understanding what things are eligible, what things aren't. All this data is going to be really crucial at product level to make sure you got it right. Origin data is going to be needed by all the teams that you're going to work with as a stakeholder. So classification data similarly. So really make sure that data is available, shared. You've got a single trusted view of that data that you can make available to all parties. I think that's going to be crucial. Same with product engineering, same with cost data. The more you can streamline the provisioning of data, even if it's in Excel, to different teams from trusted sources that people know, the more useful you're going to be as a data leader in this environment. Like I was looking at what different data and elements and requirements we've got, and there's many, right? There's so many different elements that build up into the master data view of the product that leads to the element. And I'm not going to go through this in any sort of detail, but it gives you a feel for what sort of elements you and your team need to be on top of as a data leader. So going from the data itself to the analytics, I think there's 100 different analytics use cases, but prioritization is going to be absolutely crucial. I think these 6 are, in my view, probably the ones that you're going to be, data leaders are going to be called on to implement first. So working with finance on revenue, margin, and liquidity modeling, being able to forecast that. So working closely with either you're going to be providing raw data to your FP&A teams, or you're going to be working to build models, to build more complex models maybe than your FP&A teams can do. Similarly, you're already probably doing some customer behavior modeling and forecasting. We're going to be very likely to be building new assumptions into those new price points. So expect that there's going to be different models that you will want to build around those customers. The previous behavior pattern and price pattern isn't going to be as valid as it was before. So you're going to have to start making different assumptions and dealing with that. So be aware of that. The distribution network analysis is pretty crucial, because knowing where your goods are in the supply chain, especially if they're in different countries, that's going to be quite that's going to be a big point. Also, the cost of then moving things between the different networks, these are going to be pretty crucial. So get in touch with your supply chain guys around that. We've touched before on in-transit inventory risk and impact. I think that's, if I was to do one thing, I'd be making sure I've got a report by Monday on making sure I've got a report by Monday on what's actually in transit right now, and what's and when you're going to hit, because that's going to keeping that up to date, making sure that you know what you're going to have to pay when you when your goods hit landfall in the US or in China, for example, especially going from 10% up to 100 whatever percent. That's a big financial impact on the organization. So definitely we'll be looking at that. And fulfillment cost modeling, you're going to also be looking at the potentially different shipping patterns, different trades. That's going to come on board with a lot of changes in your distribution. If you're building new warehouses, if you're using new warehouses, you're finding new suppliers. Those predictions, the cost modeling for that is going to be pretty big. And if you're changing materials or changing manufacturing locations, then working with product on cost modeling around that, I think is going to be a crucial use case for analytics teams in particular. I think one thing I wanted to do as well was compare what a well-prepared versus a poorly prepared data team would look like for this. And I think let's say structurally, there's 5 key requirements here. First of all, you need a multi-dimensional view of the business that's granular and integrated. You need to be able to respond to changes in business need quickly. You need to be able to respond to changes in data, in particular master data, really quickly. I really believe there's a need for auditable decision making. When you're making decisions about what to do something, you're probably making it based on the information you know right now. Things are changing so often at the moment that it's really important to know what happened when. So I think making sure that your decision, the data that you have is relevant is historized in a way to make sure that the decisions you made are tracked in an appropriate way is going to be crucial. And you also need to have that capacity to provide the insight into what's likely to happen or what's going to happen using predictive analytics. So let's compare what a well-prepared and a poorly prepared team. So let's say there's companies who are shipping across the world. You've got a combination of small small single line businesses, but also multinationals with multi-regions, multi-markets. All of them, you're going to need a properly integrated granular data store with all your key ERP data in there. That's everything from your sales orders, your inventory, your in-transit shipping, your purchase orders, all your invoices, understanding where you are in terms of your accounts receivables, account payable, your product, your customer. All that key data is going to be absolutely crucial for this. And comparing that to a poorly prepared one, it's the integration of that into something you can query together with integration on your products and materials across all your ERPs, your customers across all your ERPs, not having like what often happens is I've got 6 different ERPs and I've moved them all into the same data lake, but every time you need to analyze it, you need to then reintegrate everything. A good granular data store that's got a strong relationship, strong data model is going to be crucial if you're well prepared for this. Secondly, you want to be able to provision data quickly to the business, trusted sources that you can provision widely and accurately and consistently. So even if that's in Excel, you don't need to build anything fancy. Most of your counterparts on the business and on supply chain, on finance, they're probably going to be quite comfortable in Excel. So make sure you can get that data, get good quality integrated data together to them so they can make decisions quickly. The poorly prepared teams are the ones who I can only prepare. It's going to take a project to provision a new data feed, and that's going to take 2 weeks to get even approved and get done. There's quite a difference there between a well-prepared team who can get it out quickly compared to someone who's very stuck on we can only do this in a project. On the flip side, on the other side, we need to be able to add the new data and fields quickly. I think everyone's seen some data environments where it's a 6-month process to even add new data, right? You've got any new data, everything's super legacy. You're really struggling to get new data on. The ability to actually get new data in quickly, is that anything from a new API contact or just uploading Excel and linking it into your existing data model, using seeds, whatever, making that quick and being able to ensure that the data is being integrated into the right part, so it can also be then downstreamed into the right way. The quicker you can do that, the more well prepared you'll look in front of your business counterparts. Having historic and current views of data, the so-called as is and as was, or changing dimensions. This is going to be pretty important in terms of auditability. So if you're only just duplicating your ERP data into a data lake and you're just using today's data, you're going to struggle to, when the business comes back and say, okay, why did we make that decision then? What were the situations we had at that point in time? It's a little bit forensic, but I think it's something that if you're well prepared, you really will have this type of functionality about historization already in place. And finally, if your data team is purely focused on, let's say, historic BI and reporting, and you haven't got the skills, you haven't got the capabilities to enable the predictive and forecasting analytics, that's not going to be super helpful in this environment. So you're going to be, the well-prepared companies, well-prepared data teams will have much better tooling and skills for that predictive, for that forecasting element. So be aware of what these look like together. And then let's think about then what would we do next? So if I was doing this right now, this is what I would be doing in the next hours. as a data leader, I'd be speaking, I'd be on the phone to each of the leaders of those stakeholder groups. So I'd be on the phone to the CFO, the CEO, the CEO, the CFO, the head of supply chain, the head of FP&A, the head of tax, head of customs, head of product, and I'd be wanting to get in the diary for them in the next few days, even over the weekend, to make sure that we can understand what their needs are right now. Really get to grips with what are their priorities, what are the what's the data that backs that up. On the flip side, I'd be looking at my current in-flight projects. In particular, I'd be looking at of my in-flight projects, which ones can be parked for a week or two, or for a month or two, so that I can refocus on this specific need right now. I've got a full book of work. My teams are busy, but I know I'm going to need to reprioritize some things here. So I'd be doing that as a plan, and yeah, I'll need to manage. Might need to manage some comms with the stakeholders maybe, but once I've done that, I can get a list of the maximum 10 analytics initiatives, data initiatives that support the highest priorities from finance, from supply chain, from tax, from product, and from customs. And I work with those leaders to create a high-level business case, and then do the stakeholder management thing. I map them against the current book of work, take the gap to the take a proposal to the CEO and the CFO, and I'd get that approval to shift priority so that we can move into that into supporting the teams who need data at this really crucial point of time. Then from there, we'd plan what's a 90-day sprint. How do we get all this? How do we get this all together? And then how do we execute this over the coming weeks, coming months, in order to get the organization into a clear, strong, data-driven ability to respond to the tariffs. Crucial question here is you need to become a key part of the response as a data leader. You need to make this an opportunity for data to make a difference in the response to the tariffs. So wrapping up. So just to recap everything, tariffs are basically like duties. They're paid for the importer. Tariffs are basically like duties. They're paid for by the importer. They're based on the type and the origin of the goods. They're currently US is 10% on everything. 100, I think it's even 100. I haven't updated this one. 145 on China. China's gone reciprocal on the US. Everything else is paused 90 days for the reciprocals, but we need to deal with that. Companies are pausing shipping. There's an impact on in-flight exports. There's no clarity on what's happening right now. It's not a simple solve. You need to understand the supply chain. You need to understand what's in flight. You need to be planning for cost reduction. And as a data leader, you really need to connect to the supply chain, connect to finance, connect to tax, customs, and product to make this a solution. And what are you going to do next? You're going to speak to those people, and you're going to reprioritize your book of work, get the CEO on board, and then make a difference, particularly in the next 90 days. Thank you for that. In the midst of chaos, there's also opportunity. If you want to follow me, follow me on this. Please like and subscribe to this. Please follow me on LinkedIn. You can find us at calonanalytics.com, and email me at nathan@calonanalytics.com if you'd like these slides. And I've just got a thing. The situation is I've got a question in here from. Situation is very volatile. What are the top 3 priorities which address volatility and address longer term? Let me just check that I've got the full question. Someone there. Yeah. So what are the 3 priorities that address volatility and address longer term? In my view, this is going to be really understanding the profitability and pricing, making sure that, so that's going to be absolutely crucial. Making sure that you've got really good master data on your products, I think, is going to be crucial. Without the shadow of doubt, if you haven't got that, then you're really going to struggle to make any good decisions on this. And finally, the other longer term priority is enabling those connections within your organization. Making your company a more given a data-driven response to the tariffs, you'll show them that the working together through and using very good data will actually help improve the supply chain in the longer term. So I'd say those would be the three. Two specific, and one is that more cultural element. But yeah, profitability and margins, product master data, and creating those connections that create that longer term value, especially for expecting a more prolonged trade war. Any other questions? Yeah, thank you. In that case, thank you very much for taking part. Thank you very much. This will be up on YouTube very shortly, and you can look back into it and maybe have a look at it again, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.